Everybody, I'd like to welcome you to today's Qatar Transportation webcast titled Building an Alternative Fuel Bus Program, Funding Opportunities and Best Practices for Transit Agencies. We have three presenters today, Mr. Alex Kolpakov, Ms. Austin Marie Sipiora, and Jacob Lubatka. So I will take a moment to introduce each of them. The first person we'll introduce is Alex. Alex is a research associate here at Qatar. He has over 15 years of experience in transportation research. During his tenure at Qatar, he has managed a wide variety of transportation-related research projects, including evaluating alternative propulsion technologies and fuels, performing economic impact analysis of transportation investment, assessing aviation capital investments and airport security needs, analyzing user rates and fees at public use airports, as well as performing transportation policy analysis. Ms. Austin Marie Sipiora is a research assistant here at Qatar. She has over 2 years of experience in transportation research with expertise in alternative fuels and advanced vehicle technologies. And during her time at Qatar, she has assisted with a variety of clean transportation and alternative fuels projects. And she co-manages the Department of Energy-sponsored Tampa Bay Clean Cities Coalition and works directly with the community stakeholders to facilitate petroleum reduction projects in the region. And Jacob is a transit planner from the Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority. He works with a dedicated planning team on a variety of transit projects ranging in route redesign to planning for electric buses. He oversees PSTA's Zero Emission Vehicle Program, which has provided funding for up to 6 electric buses through various sources. He works in developing innovative transit projects and assessing their effectiveness at serving existing and potential riders. So with that being said, I am going to hand the presentation over to Alex. Alex?
Thank you, Stephanie, for the introduction. Today, we would like to cover several topics in our presentation. First, we'll give a brief overview of the Department of Energy Clean Cities program. Then, we'll briefly mention what transit agencies are doing in terms of alternative fuels. And we'll discuss some of the major funding sources and programs that are available to transit agencies to fund the conversion to alternative fuels. And then Jacob will also talk about PSTA experience with implementing electric transit bus program. Now, many of you are probably familiar with the Clean Cities program, but if you're not, I'll just give you a brief overview. The Clean Cities program is run by the U.S. Department of Energy out of the Vehicle Technology Office. And there are 5 sub-programs under the Vehicle Technology Office that include the batteries and vehicle electrification. That the program is doing the advanced battery research, then advanced combustion system and fuels. That program is focused on engine research, including advanced fuels. Then materials technology, this is the research of R&D for developing lightweight and high-strength materials to increase the vehicle efficiency. Another program is energy efficiency and mobility systems. It's research related to innovative transportation systems and vehicle technologies. And the 5th area is the technology integration. Well, the Clean Cities program falls under the technology integration program. The first 4 programs focus mainly on early-stage R&D efforts, while the technology integration provides real-world feedback to those research-focused programs to help them identify the technology gaps. Now, the Clean Cities program ultimately fosters the economic, environmental, and energy security of the United States by supporting local actions to advance affordable domestic transportation fuels and technologies that reduce petroleum use. The national program provides tools, publications, training, and other resources to support the local coalitions. DOE also provides some modest grants to help finance the activities of the local coalitions. The Clean Cities coalitions typically include various types of organizations. They may include private businesses, fuel providers, vehicle fleets, state and local governments, government agencies, and so forth. Now, there are roughly 90 local coalitions across the United States, and you can see on the map that practically every large metropolitan area has one. In fact, 82% of the U.S. population lives inside the boundaries of Clean Cities Coalition. There are currently 4 officially designated Clean Cities Coalitions in Florida, and Tampa Bay is one of them. We are relatively new. Tampa Bay Clean Cities Coalition was designated by the U.S. DOE in 2014, so currently we are the second youngest coalition in the United States. The mission of Tampa Bay Clean Cities Coalition is similar to the National Clean Cities Program, is to advance the energy, economic, and environmental security of the United States through efforts in our region and be a recognized source for technical assistance, networking, and identification of grant opportunities in the area of alternative fuels. What we do, we work with vehicle fleets, city and county governments, utilities, and other stakeholders to promote the use of alternative fuels and other advanced propulsion technologies. The coalition covers the area of 6-county region in the west central Florida, and that includes the counties of Hillsborough, Pinellas, Pasco, Polk, Manatee, and Sarasota. The total population of this area is over 4 million people, and the coalition is housed at the Center for Urban Transportation Research at USF. We are a membership-based organization and currently have about 30 members that support us with their dues. As you can see, the membership base is pretty diverse. We have utilities, different municipalities, colleges, universities, businesses, fuel providers, transit agencies, and other stakeholders on our list of members. The benefits of membership include the promotion, access to technical expertise and assistance, as well as exhibit and vendor opportunities at the events that the coalition hosts. Now, we have a variety of alternative fuels in Tampa Bay, from gaseous fuels to biofuels and electric. But currently, the natural gas probably has the largest market in the area. We have about 5 public CNG stations in our area and have several large CNG users. For example, Tampa International Airport that runs CNG vans and buses. Several cities and counties in our region also have CNG refuse trucks. Then HART, our local transit agency in Tampa, runs CNG transit buses, and we also have some large distributors that run CNG semi-trucks. Propane is also gaining popularity, especially in the school bus market. There are a few school districts in the area that run propane school buses. But the biggest improvement that we've seen recently was in the electric market. It's growing really fast, and some of the examples of the electric service in our area is Downtowner, which is a free downtown shuttle service that uses all-electric vehicles to transport people. And also, Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority is developing a robust electric program that Jacob will talk about a little bit later in the presentation. Now, as one of our tasks as a coalition, officially designated coalition, is to collect the annual data on alternative fuel use and projects in our region. So this data that we collect from stakeholders was submitted to the U.S. DOE, and they compile it into aggregate report that shows the petroleum displacement and greenhouse gas emission totals for the year. Well, last year, the actions of our stakeholders resulted in the displacement of 8.9 million gasoline gallon equivalents of petroleum and a reduction of over 12,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions. Of that 8.9 million displacement, local transit agencies are responsible for about 1 million. So the transit agencies' impact is pretty significant. One thing that I need to mention here is that these reports are based on self-reported data. We survey the stakeholders and essentially report what they're willing to share with us. So there is a possibility that we are not capturing everything. So we assume that the reductions may be even greater. Now, in general, we see a clear trend of the increased use of alternative fuel vehicles, and this is both on the light duty and heavy duty side. The leaders in heavy-duty application of alternative fuel vehicles are refuse haulers, delivery companies, and the transit agencies. Well, in this presentation, we'll focus mainly on what the transit agencies are doing. So the most common technologies that are available for transit service include the CNG, propane, maybe to a lesser extent, then electrification of vehicle accessories, and also battery electric technology that came out recently. The growth and adoption of battery electric technology has been assisted by the dramatic decrease in cost of the batteries and great improvements in the performance of the batteries. So this trend is observed in the heavy-duty market as well as in the light-duty sector as well. So as a result, the electric transit buses are becoming more common in many places. Now, the primary reasons that the transit agencies may have to implement alternative fuel programs are to run more sustainable operations, improve air quality, and reduce operating costs. And that can happen either through fuel cost savings or reduction in maintenance costs or both. But like any new technologies, the alternative fuel vehicles present some challenges, especially at the early stage of adoption. Well, the typical challenges that that are associated with running alternative fuel technologies are listed on the slide. Those technologies are still more expensive upfront, so the upfront cost is a little higher than the regular diesel. Then they may not always provide the expected performance and cost savings. And we've seen that with some Florida agencies that report their data to us under the FDOT-sponsored project. Then some of those technologies have some range limitations, and this is especially relevant for the battery electric vehicles. They still may have smaller range that compared to the diesel buses. And there's also a requirement to modify the maintenance facilities and invest in fueling infrastructure, and both of those can be pretty significant expenses. And also the agency personnel would need to get training to handle the new vehicles as well, and that is a certain expense for the agencies as well. Now, despite those potential challenges, quite a few transit agencies in Florida operate alternative fuel buses or hybrids. So here's the list of major transit agencies in Florida that employ either alternative fuels or hybrid technologies. And you can notice that there are 3 transit agencies in our area, in the Tampa Bay area: the Manatee County Transit, HART, and PSTA. This list is not complete, so these are just the largest agencies that we identified for the purpose of an example. But there could be some other smaller agencies that also run alternative fuels as well. And with that, I'll turn it over to Austin, and she'll talk about funding sources that are available for transit agencies to finance alternative fuel vehicle acquisitions. Austin?
Thanks, Alex. So like you said, we're going to switch gears to talk about funding options that are available to transit agencies to use to help incorporate alternative fuels into your fleet. So there are various sources for funding available on the federal level. The FTA has awarded about $8.7 million in grants through the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, which was used for funding vehicles, equipment, infrastructure, which included those for alternative fuels. So this act was also responsible for the Tigger program, which allocated about $50 million in 2011 to public transit agencies for investments that would reduce energy consumption and also greenhouse gas emissions. So in addition, there's also the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program, known as CMAQ, and the FTA Low-No program, which I'll be talking a little bit more in detail in a minute. And there are also opportunities at the state level for funding sources, which I'll be delving a little deeper into later. So the CMAQ program is administered by the FHWA, and they've provided more than $30 billion to fund over 30,000 projects. So funding is given to areas primarily in non-attainment or maintenance for certain air pollutants, which can include ozone, carbon monoxide, and particulate matter. And the thought is that these target areas are where these transportation investments can really impact air quality. So CMAQ funds can be used for several things. It can include startup funds for new transit services, system and service expansions, fare structures, and also for the purchase of alternative fuel vehicles, which could include making up for that incremental cost, engine or vehicle replacement, after treatment hardware, emission control equipment, and also idle reduction technologies. So we've seen several cases where CMAQ funding has been applied for alternative fuels. A few years back, Maryland received about $6 million for CNG transit buses and a fueling station. And in 2014, Ohio was also awarded about $5 million to implement electric trolley buses. So CMAQ funding provides about $2.3 to $2.5 billion each year for the authorization, which is currently good through 2020. So we can anticipate that in fiscal years 2019 and 2020, there's about $2.5 billion available for each year, which you can find information about that specific funding source on the FHWA website. So I'm sure many of you on the call today are familiar with the Low-No program, which is administered by the Federal Transit Administration, which is provided for under their Bus and Bus Facilities Investment Umbrella Program. So this program makes federal resources available for transit investments, but specifically for zero-emission transit buses, as well as for the fueling stations and the charging equipment for those buses. And I'd also like to mention that these Low-No grants do require a cost share, which the breakdown is provided for in the slide. And you'll hear a little bit later from Jacob on how these grants can kind of be used most effectively to fund these alt fuel projects and how you can get those match dollars. So in 2018, the FTA allocated about $84 million to fund 52 projects in 41 states, which do include several projects here in Florida. So Broward County is going to be getting electric buses and is also planning for solar-powered charging infrastructure. And it's not on the slide here, but I should also say that Miami-Dade County is receiving funding through a separate award under the same umbrella Bus and Bus Facilities Infrastructure Program, and that's going to be used to purchase CNG buses. So also under Low-No, Gainesville is investing in electric buses and charging stations, as well as PSTA in Pinellas County. So in addition to these federal awards, there are also some state-level opportunities. Of course, the VW settlement is expected, and in some cases already has started to provide funding sources at the state level for alternative fuel projects. So I'll provide just a little bit of background on the VW settlement, as some of you may already be familiar and have been keeping track of the development of the settlement. So Volkswagen has agreed to spend up to $14.9 billion to settle the diesel cheating allegations that happened, or I should say discovered, back in 2014. So out of that total, $10 billion of that is being spent to purchase the vehicles back, and then the remainder is being split into those two pots of funding. So $2 million is being allocated towards a national zero-emission vehicle investment program under their Electrify America program. And then that remaining $2.9 billion is going to be allocated towards the Environmental Mitigation Trust, which is being used to support state projects that reduce NOx emissions. So under the Mitigation Trust, there are certain eligible projects that states can opt to fund, which could include the power and replacement of older diesel vehicles with new diesel, alternative fuels, or electric. So typically what we've seen is that the designated beneficiary in each state, which could vary depending on the department that's been identified as the beneficiary, so they will hold a public comment period to get some early feedback on the direction that the state should take in developing its plan, followed by the release of a draft plan and then a final plan, which is submitted to the settlements trustee, which kind of outlines their general strategies for spending the funds. So as of this month, we've had about 28 states release their final mitigation plans, and 17 states and DC have released their draft plans. Additionally, we have about 5 states that have at this point held a series of public meetings and established their lead agencies, but have not yet released draft plans. So for those states that have submitted final plans, I conducted kind of a cursory review, which showed that a good majority of the states have allocated funding for transit. And but I do want to point out that there is kind of considerable variation both in the amount of funding and then the eligibility requirements attached to that funding. For example, there are certain states that have allocated transit funding only for those public transit agencies. So this slide just kind of gives a general overview of those states that have seemed to prioritize funding for transit projects. So I'm not going to read through them all, but just to highlight a couple. So Colorado has provided for about $18 million to replace transit buses with alt fuels and electric options. And this state has also opted to include funding for both the vehicles and the charging equipment. Georgia has committed 100% of their mitigation funds, which is a little over $6 million, for new diesel and battery electric transit buses. So to my knowledge, the state has already allocated those funds to their express system and also new electric buses for their airport. So Illinois, they've used their funding to put together a program called Driving a Cleaner Illinois, which is going to be used to help fund the replacement of public transit buses with new diesel, alternative fuel, or electric options. So I do want to point out that not all of these states currently have requests for project proposals out yet, but I do want to highlight that it is important to be aware that states are beginning to release, or in some cases have already released, RFPs, and want to make sure that you're aware of the specific funding opportunities available to you in your state. So in addition to kind of the general overview of the federal sources and then this potential VW funding, there are examples at the state and local levels that can help offset the cost of alternative fuel vehicles and infrastructure. And so this slide just provides a snapshot of some of the state rebate programs, vouchers, and grants that are available. And I know that Alex had briefly touched on the resources that are available to you through Clean Cities, but I do want to point out that the Alternative Fuel Data Center is one of those tools managed by the Department of Energy that provides information on funding and incentive opportunities. In addition, the Clean Cities Coalitions, we're here to help you with education, outreach, networking, tech assistance, grant and funding applications, and even possible partnerships with DOE grants. So just to put a shameless plug in here, that if you haven't already, I would suggest connecting with your local coalition to see what opportunities may be there. So just to conclude, again, there are some creative funding solutions that really may be key for your agency to invest in alternative fuels, which I do think Jacob is going to touch on a bit in his presentation. So just a reminder that we will be taking questions at the end, and I want to thank everyone for their time, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Jacob.
All right, great. Thank you, Austin. So I am Jacob Obutka. I'm a project planner with the Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority. Let's try, I have to control the slides now. There we go. All right, so I'm going to talk about our agency's Zero Emission Vehicle Program, which is essentially just a fancy way of saying our plan for getting more all-electric buses into our fleet. So I'll just touch on how our fleet has historically looked and what the fueling sources has been like and how we've gotten to the point where we've started to consider all-electric vehicle technologies, as well as our existing plans for getting these buses and what the future of our zero-emission vehicle program could look like. So, as is the case with most transit agencies, the majority of our buses have been funded strictly by diesel fuels. This ranges from, they're all pretty much Gillig buses, like the 1 to 2 pictured on the top. We did have a few MCI or commuter coach buses, like the one pictured on the bottom, but those have all been retired out of our fleet. However, in 2009, our agency made the decision to change the way we procured our buses, and we made the decision to strictly procure hybrid electric vehicles. Even though it was a little more on the capital side, I think our agency realized both the environmental benefits of getting these buses into the fleet, as well as the reduced life cycle costs, particularly due to the increased fuel efficiency and rising gas prices, which I think were especially an issue back in 2009. So we actually have the largest hybrid electric fleet in the state of Florida. We have about 200 buses in our fleet, and about 71 of them are strictly our hybrid electric vehicles.
Hey, Jacob, it's Stephanie. Do you think you could take a couple steps closer to your microphone so you're just a little bit louder?
I'm sorry about that. Let me move. I'll move the phone closer. Is that better?
That is better. Thank you.
Okay, great. I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay.
All right. All right, so the next kind of vehicle I'm going to talk about, it's still a hybrid, but I like to call it a super hybrid. So it's known as a BAE series hybrid. So it still runs on diesel, still has an electric motor, but the motor is a little more powerful. This is a picture of what the motor looks like. But something that's notable and I think kind of cool about this is that this actually can be adaptable in the future to become all electric. So I think as the technology improves, I think we're definitely going to look for opportunities to make that a reality. But even in the meantime, there are some really cool features of this bus that are kind of in the middle between being your standard hybrid bus and an all-electric bus. So it has a couple of different operating modes. It has what's known as the stop-start mode. Like a lot of vehicles, just regular cars produced, if you pull up to an intersection and idle there for a long period of time, the engine will actually turn off. It's a similar concept here. Whenever the bus is maybe at bus stops or at intersections, it'll turn off the engine briefly, to make it more quiet for passengers boarding. There's a depot drive mode, so similar concept to, except it'll shut the engine off in any depots or transfer centers to reduce noise and improve air quality. And something that's new for these buses is that there's an extended range where it can actually operate solely on electric power for a limited number of miles. So this could be used to operate in sensitive areas such as hospitals, campuses. It gives the example of tunnels here. Not that we have tunnels here, but that is a best practice that is employed by other agencies with expansive all-electric fleet where they do have tunnels to prevent emissions from going up in those sorts of environments. So of course now we come to what our primary topic is today, all-electric buses. So we made the decision about 2 or 3 years ago to purchase from our own fund 2 all-electric buses from the manufacturer BYD. So they've actually already been delivered to our facility, and we're currently in the process of testing out these vehicles. So let me go. Sorry, let's get to my next slide here. So these are just some specs of the vehicles. I'm not going to run through all of them, but just some things of note. So the top speed of these vehicles is about 62 miles an hour, which is perfectly sufficient to operate in about 95% of our traditional operating environment. I know there was discussion before about the range of the vehicles. So the manufacturer says that the range of these is about 145 miles. However, this is something that we will definitely be testing. I think given the Florida heat and the need to run air conditioning a lot on these buses, we do not know if it will live up to this or not. So that is something we're definitely going to be testing before this actually goes out into revenue service. So of course, when you order these sorts of buses, you need to have charging equipment that is associated with these. So there's 2 different types of chargers that we will be investing in. So first, there is depot charging. These are the chargers that will actually be installed at our facility in our garage. So it's kind of similar to how you might fuel your car, except instead of gasoline that comes out of it, of course, it is electricity. So take it out of the depot charger and you put it into a side holster entry point of the bus, and it can charge overnight whenever it is back at the facility. Of course, given the limited range of the bus, we also have to think about, well, how can we keep a sufficient charge for it to operate throughout the day? So that is where an en-route charger comes in. So we are currently in the process of installing an en-route charger for our first test route. So it essentially works by, so if you see our picture on the left, is a metal plate that is actually installed into the ground. And on the picture on the right is a metal plate that is installed on the bottom of the all-electric bus. So essentially how the charging works is when the bus will pull up to this metal plate in the ground. So the metal plate on the bus is aligned with the metal plate in the ground, and it will actually charge wirelessly through a process known as inductive charging. So this is, I like to compare it to how one charges your cell phone on these new wireless pads that have come out, or even some new kinds of toothbrushes that are out on the market. So this is what the test route will look like for these electric vehicles. So this is our redesigned downtown circulator in St. Petersburg. So this actually just began, the new route just began service on Sunday of this week. We actually brought the electric bus out last week at the launch event to have people ride around and to get a sense for what this technology is like. So these are not on the route yet. We will be testing these vehicles a little more over the next month or two, and in addition at stop number 10 in the University of South Florida area of downtown, that is where we will actually be installing the on-route charger. So I think we liked this as a test route because I think this was a good length to start. So this is only about a 4-mile route, so you could do many runs without even the need for on-route charging before the battery be depleted. And then in addition, we believe that there would be really good air quality benefits to reducing emissions in this area, especially given the high pedestrian activity within this district, and especially when it goes through the hospital district near stop 11. So for those reasons, we thought that this was a really good place for us to start to bring electric bus technology into Pinellas County. So the buses should start running along this route probably around early next year in January. So this is, I guess, what I consider to be the first phase of our program. So we had to ask ourselves, where do we go from here, and how can we fund additional investments in electric vehicle technology? So something that Austin talked about that we received, we applied for the FTA Low and No Vehicle Program. We applied both in fiscal year 17 and 18 and received $1 million each year to invest in electric vehicle technologies. So I'm going to go over just some of the reasons I thought that we produced a really strong application and we were able to receive funding from the FTA. So one thing that I think played in our favor was that we had already previously ordered electric buses. So this was something that was just beyond a pilot. We developed some of the in-house staff expertise at electric vehicles. Even before the vehicles arrived here, we had staff that went over to the BYD plant in California to actually study these vehicles and to look at them and to get an understanding of what the technology is like and how they operate. So I think that was something that really played in our favor. We also contributed more than the minimum local match. So as Austin said, the minimum local match is 15% with a match from the FTA of 85%. However, there is a clause in the Notice of Funding Opportunity that says that the FTA may prioritize projects with a higher local match because I think they want to fund as many projects as possible. So I think they want their money to be spread to as many different projects as possible to spread electric vehicle and other alternative fuel technologies across the U.S. as much as possible. So that is something that we definitely took seriously in developing our project budget. It also helped that our project was scalable. So for both years, we actually applied for several $1 million to invest both in electric bus technology, but as well, in addition, we also asked for funding for the more capital side of things, to be able to improve the facility, to be able to handle charging additional electric vehicles down the road, invest in additional on-route chargers and what have you. However, we did receive less than what we had asked for, so because of that, but we were able to demonstrate in our application that this was a scalable project, so if we didn't receive all of the funding, we could still make an investment in the technology. So I think that certainly played in our favor. We had a project partner with the Center for Transportation and the Environment, who they work with alternative fuel and electric bus projects across the country. They were very instrumental in putting our application package together, especially being able to quantify the benefits of deploying this technology and what that would do from an emission standpoint. I think there will also be very valuable going forward in ensuring that we deploy these buses in a feasible way and get very useful and valuable data from these deployments. And lastly, something that I think also really, was both helpful for us as an agency, but helpful for this application, was that this project was not a standalone project, and that this is part of a long-term strategic program to bring electric vehicle technology to our service area. So, of course, we had our first phase, which was our downtown project. Our second phase, actually, let me go to the next slide. So, yeah, this slide details sort of in a summary form what our 10-year program looks like. So like I was just saying, our first phase was what that our current downtown project. Phase 2 is getting additional buses, leveraging both our resources and LONO funding. So I think in the coming years, we're going to be looking to new alternative funding sources. So I think, as Austin mentioned, we're going to be taking a keen interest in the Volkswagen settlement for the next few phases of our program. We responded to an RFI last year, and so we definitely got involved in that process and that conversation. So we're definitely keeping a very close eye out on that. And then eventually we will likely make another investment in electric vehicle technology down the road in a future phase. And in addition to planning out these phases, we have a conceptual plan of how we might deploy these routes. So there's a map on the right that shows possible routes that we would deploy on by phase, where on-route chargers would go, and what have you. So I think this shows really what our strategic plan for getting these buses out onto the road is. And it shows that we want to spread the benefits of this technology over the next 10 years across our service area, but in addition, operate this in different testing environments. So, soon we'll have these operating in a downtown testing environment. In a few years, we'll have them operating down urban and suburban thoroughfares. Eventually, we'd like them to operate through some of our beach communities, and then eventually into North County. Yeah, so this is definitely all part of a long-term program, and I think it really helps to attract additional dollars from whether it's, LONO or any other source when you have some sort of vision from what an alternative fuel vehicle program looks like. So it all starts with this bus. So this was actually the bus that we brought out to our event that we held to celebrate the launch of our new downtown looper and bringing electric vehicle technology to Pinellas County. So this is where it starts, and I think we're very hopeful and excited to see where the next 10 years brings us. And with that, I am going to pass it back to Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Austin, Alex, and Jacob, for the very informative presentation. At this time, I'm going to open up the floor for questions. I did want to let you know that I did add in the link section, at the last link that's available, I added a quick link to that Alternative Fuels Data Center homepage that Austin spoke about a little bit earlier, so that is also available. If you would like to ask a question, that Q&A box is located in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen in case you have any questions, and we do have several, so I'll reach out and I'll try to get them to where they need to go. So Jacob, it looks like this first question is for you. Were the PSTA electric buses purchased with any federal funds?
Well, so the first two buses that we just purchased, that was strictly with PSTA resources. However, for the on-route charger, that was funded, we partnered with the county and used BP settlement funds to get the on-route charger that we're currently installing downtown.
Okay. And this may, we'll see who can answer this. This is sort of a multi-part question. It says several agencies in our area, I'm not sure where this person is from, have found that hybrid buses are actually more challenging to maintain. What did your research find, and how might the BAE series be different? And then follow-up, it says, do you know if the BAE series is covered with Volkswagen funding? Final question, do you have pricing or spec information you can share about the BAE series?
I guess I'll take a whack at this one. So I'm certainly no expert in BAE series buses. I guess to the point of hybrid vehicles, I think both. I think the main success of them, obviously, is the increased fuel efficiency. But of course, I think a challenge is making sure that the battery lasts through the useful life of the vehicle. So I know that is something that our maintenance staff do regularly have to take a look at. For the cost of the BAE series, I don't know the exact figure. I think it's in the range of about maybe between about $720,000, somewhere around there. Don't quote me on the figure. I think it's something like that. And and I would venture to guess that for the Volkswagen funds, and maybe Austin, you can follow up on this. I think any sort of alternative fuel vehicles are covered, or even diesels are covered. So I think that BAE would fall under that umbrella.
Sure, and I'd add that so each state has kind of their I mean, they have to follow sort of the set eligible projects that the VW settlement identified as priority projects, but the states do have some decision-making power to say, well, we want to limit this transit funding to zero emission only. I know in California, part of their rollout money is going to be just allocated for zero emission. However, many of the other states that I've looked through have said that they're open to, clean diesel alternative fuels as well as electric. And again, I think a lot of this is going to hinge on showing what kind of emissions benefits you can get with the type of propulsion system that you're putting your project in for. And they can use several different models. There's an EAP diesel emissions quantifier, and DOE also has a GREET model. So again, it's kind of going to be up to the state-specific RFP. But I certainly anticipate that those would be covered by most of them.
And then the next question comes in. It says, what is the length of the route for the electric bus?
So for our the downtown circulator route, that route is only about, I'd say, like a little over 4 miles. I think we just wanted to start with a shorter route for testing the electric buses, but I think as our expansion plan shows, I think we're going to look into testing on longer routes in the coming years.
Jacob, this question is sort of a follow-up for you. Actually, there's a couple more here for you. So it says, what do you have in mind as far as strategy to reduce Pinellas County's demand charges as your EV fleet expands?
So that is a great question, one that I do not entirely have the answer to. So I know that's a question that we've had to ask ourselves as we, want to get more buses into our fleet. So I think, having 2 to 6 buses, I think, is manageable given our current utility system. But I think as we go further beyond that, we're really going to have to look at what investments we're going to have to make and how we're going to reduce, our demand charges and, manage energy costs. So I know we are putting a plan in place. But yeah, that's something that is an ongoing thing that we're looking to answer for ourselves.
Okay, Jacob, this is another one for you. It says, would you mind sharing the approximate cost of the en-route charging stations, equipment, and infrastructural costs?
Sure. So the en-route charger costs somewhere in the ballpark of about $400,000 to $500,000, and I think that's for the charger itself. And the installation costs, I think we budget about another $500,000 for that. It may not actually cost that much, but I think we just we make sure contingency is built in and things like that. But that's the approximate cost of that.
Next question says, how would you compare the cost of electricity versus CNG on buses? That may be for Alex or Austin.
Well, from what we've seen, and again, we haven't seen the data from PSTA because their program is relatively new, but from what we've seen in the research that we do statewide, that the electric vehicles typically are cheaper to operate compared to CNG. They have their own issues in terms of there is a learning curve in terms of maintenance of those vehicles, but in terms of the fuel cost is significantly low than the CNG.
The next question comes in, are you looking at battery storage, solar, or other batteries to eliminate demand charges?
I think that's something we're certainly looking into. I think my kind of my dream vision is to get a solar project going here. So I would love for our agency to be able to invest in solar infrastructure to be able to charge some of these electric buses so it can actually be 100% truly renewable rather than coming off the grid. So I know that is something that we're looking into. I think we're just trying to identify steps to actually implement that vision.
The next question comes in and says, are there any additional resources available for rural agencies that are looking into procuring environmentally friendly buses?
So I guess I'll jump in and say that off the top of my head, I couldn't list a specific funding source that would just be dedicated specifically for rural routes, but it's certainly not necessarily excluded from the available federal funding sources. I don't know if Alex has anything to add on that.
I actually think I may have something to add on that. So I do know there's the BUILD grant through DOT, which is sort of the successor to Tiger. And from my understanding of that program, they actually have allow for a higher federal match for rural projects. Now, I think that grant kind of runs the gambit and can be a lot of things transportation related. So, I mean, I would actually, go into the NOFO for next year's build to look at it. But I think that is something rural agencies could look into, especially since there is a higher match that is allocated for rural projects, I believe.
Will the low-no funding be available in 2019?
Well, so right now, they've submitted a budget request for about $700 million for the Bus and Bus Facilities Investment Program, but that, of course, is dependent on the fiscal year budget, so it's to be determined.
Okay. What is the state of Florida's plan for its VW settlement funding?
So Florida has allocated about $167 million, which I believe we're the third state in terms of the largest settlement dollar amount. So our lead agency is the Department of Environmental Protection. So earlier this year, back in about March, the DEP did hold a series of public meetings to solicit public feedback. And they also ran an online survey that closed in May of this year. So we've been told by DEP officials that the draft plan is expected to be released for public comment, we were told, by the end of this month, but with the expectation to submit a plan by the end of this calendar year. So, at this point, we're not sure exactly how the state intends to allocate the funding, but again, we do our best to communicate those updates with our stakeholders.
And then this question is for Alex. It says, our change from CNG hybrid to full electric, 36 buses are our fuel cost per mile. Overall cost per mile has not decreased. Please describe how other properties decrease the cost per mile.
Well, the ones that we've seen, in fact, the only we're talking about hybrids. Okay. So what we've seen that hybrids typically are pretty efficient in the costs compared to the diesel. So if you compare them to diesel, then they give you anywhere from 20 to 30% improvement. Well, as opposed to the CNG, in some cases they could be similar to CNG. In some cases they could provide a little bit better. But I guess it really depends on your operations, on your routes. But I believe that both CNG and hybrids, they are either comparable or, I mean, it's really hard to pick the winner there because both of those can provide benefits both in terms of the maintenance as well as the fuel cost. But from what we've seen in Florida so far is that the hybrid buses are a little bit better on the maintenance cost compared to CNG, and probably about the same in terms of the fuel cost. But that's what we've seen based on the Florida data. Again, I mean, Florida is all flat, so it might be a little bit different if you look at some other areas of the country where you have different terrain and different weather.
Okay. The next question comes in and says, what is the estimated life cycle savings of operating electric over diesel buses?
So this is something that we have, I think we calculated about a year ago. So I think we estimated that so FTA's definition of useful life is 12 years. So we calculated over 12 years that with the savings in fuel and maintenance costs, we estimate the savings would be at least around $450,000 over that 12-year life cycle. So I think that sort of figure varies wildly by fuel costs. And one note that this is strictly just on the operations side, especially regarding fuel and maintenance. This isn't referring to capital. But yeah, on the operations side, I think there is definitely a potential for long-term savings. And I think that figure currently may even be more than we calculated, because I think fuel prices have gone up since we calculated that figure last year.
And then how much does electric bus cost relative to a non-EV bus?
So I think the electric buses that we procure, we estimate that they're around, we'll say about $850,000, and that's with all of the systems installed on board. And I believe that also includes the cost of the depot charger, if I'm not mistaken. And a traditional diesel bus, I think these days run about $550,000.
Okay, it doesn't look like we have any additional questions at this time. So I would like to thank Austin and Alex and Jacob so much for the great presentation. I am going to open up the evaluation on your end. If you could take a few moments to complete the evaluation, as the feedback provided is very important to not only the entire Cutter Transportation webcast series, but to the presenters as well. I promise it will take you no longer than 3 minutes to click some buttons and to type a couple short responses. Again, thank you so much to Austin, Alex, and Jacob. We do have our next Cutter Transportation webcast scheduled for 2 weeks from Wednesday, so it is actually 1 day earlier. This will be Work Zone Crash Analysis in Florida, presented by one of our researchers here at the Center for Urban Transportation Research, Dr. Moed Islam. So again, thank you so much for today's presentation, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.